Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tamassak bi sunnatihi ila yawmiddin amma ba'd. So in continuing discussing the book Al-Mulakhas Al-Fiqhi by Shaykh Salih Fawzan, Hafidallah Tabaraka Ta'ala, and discussing concerning of those matters that relates to Bab al-Ahkam al-Buyu'. We're discussing concerning different type of business transaction and also matters that and other matters that pertain to this. So we had ended in the last lesson that we had that relates to concerning as-sulh, concerning ahkam as-sulh. Regarding then the next discussion to be covered is what you title as Babun fi ahkam jiwar wa turaqat. So discussing concerning of those things that are covered regarding matter that relates to neighborly rights and also use of the pathway. So these are the things to be covered regarding this discussion or this chapter. Tafaddal.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Qala ma'alif hafidahullah. Chapter 19, page 113, title Neighbourhood and Roadways. Faqihs have dealt with the issue of neighbourhood and roadways and the rulings related thereof because of the great importance this issue has. Problems may arise between neighbours and ought to be immediately solved, lest they should cause dispute and hostility.
So he discussed concerning of those things that are covered within the fuqaha or in these chapters is matter that relates to neighbourly rights and and also the use of the pathway, the streets. So Islam put emphasis regarding all matters, including concerning that as jiran, as neighbours, what are those rights that neighbours has between themselves, and those rights may vary regarding concern that a neighbour being one Muslims and also at times non-Muslim, but there's still rights that are to be observed from both sides regarding those that are considered to be neighbours. So I'll go discuss some of those matters. So of those things that sometimes that require some form of arbitration regarding neighbours, that dispute that may occur regarding matters regarding miyah, regarding water, regarding its flow from one person's property to another person's property, also regarding concerning land rights, regarding that a person not moving the boundaries of the person's property and somewhat taking more of that person's property. So, and also those things regarding how one can benefit regarding the use of pathways or pathways that are shared between neighbors. So these are of those things that sometimes occur, that will occur regarding neighbors, and the author, Hafidullah, will try to cover some of those matters. So he mentions
Muslims ought to solve these problems by arranging conciliation between neighbours who are in disagreement in a way that achieves justice and benefit. If someone makes conciliation, for example, to allow water to pass to him through the land of the neighbour or over his housetop by means of a water pipe, for example, in return for compensation, this conciliation is valid since it is necessary. If this compensation is to be paid in return for a benefit or for making use of the land or the housetop while they still belong to their owner, this is considered renting. If one wishes to possess the part of the neighbour's housetop or land through which water passes, then this is considered selling.
So of those things that he discussed regarding that as neighbours, there are times that might need access to the person's property, and we even find concerning. So you might find a neighbour that they might want to do some construction or some work on their property, but it may require them to get access to their property, that they have to go through a neighbour's property. So by this, that some form of compensation can be given by the one who needs to have access to that neighbour's property, but they have to give them some form of compensation. So it's something which is acknowledged in the Sharia and also still followed even in most societies. So in most societies that they have those rules regarding if one wish to have access to the neighbour's property, or then a form of compensation is or can be given. The matter they discussed regarding this matter, before they went into some of this discussion, that after they discussed concerning that the ulama have a discussion regarding how to decide as to who is considered to be your neighbour. So to what extent is a person considered to be your neighbour? So you have that discussion regarding to what extent regarding concerning the houses closest to you, who said to be those neighbours, that these rights are to be given. So a discussion regarding concern, I mentioned that different aqwal between the ulama, but they mentioned that regarding concerning what constitute a neighbor, it goes back to the urf of that country or that time. So what is said to be of your neighbor, so some may put the 10 house to the right, 10 house to the left, 10 house in front, or 10 house behind. That's concerned that you have some aqwal regarding that by some of the ulama, but they mentioned that what seems to be the more correct approach regarding identifying who said to be or to what extent who said to be your neighbor, it goes back to the urf, it goes back to the custom of those people. So if just one house or a few houses, if there's a custom in that locality, then that is what is taken to be. Those are said to be your neighbors, and they would have these rights more will first apply to them. These rights will first more so apply to them. Aywa.
If a neighbor is in need of a passage through a property of the neighbor in return for a compensation or through conciliation, this will be permissible since it is necessary. The owner of the land or the housetop should not take advantage of his neighbor's need by asking for a high compensation or refusing to let him make use of the passageway. Thus, the owner causes hardship to his neighbor and prevents him from fulfilling his needs. Moreover, if a branch of one's tree in his land or his house extends to reach the land or the house of the person next to him, it becomes obligatory on the owner to remove it, either by cutting or bending it towards another direction to pull it away from the land or house of the neighbor. If the owner of the branch refuses to do one of the aforesaid actions, the landowner or the house owner is entitled to remove the harm caused by the branch with one of these actions, since this branch is thus a violation which is to be removed by an action that causes the least damage. If both agree by means of conciliation to leave the branch in its place, this will be permissible, whether in return for a compensation according to the soundest view of scholars in this regard, or on the basis of sharing the fruit of the branch.
So the Sheikh mentioned regarding of those things that one should take into account regarding concerning if there's a need regarding one of the neighbors wanted to have access to the other neighbor's property due to some circumstance, then for that neighbor to give access. So it's right for both as being a good neighbor is to give that access to your neighbor with some form of guidelines in place. So those things sometimes may occur, but both is to come to some form of agreement regarding what is said to be amicable between both. So and also you'll find that even the law of these lands, that they have these things in place. You work in construction, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So regarding concern that now a blackout light and all those things, all those things are considered.
Party wall.
Or party wall. So all those things are a part of now what they have in place, even in a Muslim society. So show that Islam even already have considered those things and have those things in place. So the general idea is that one, if that is required, that for both parties, regarding being neighbors, as being a good neighbor to each other, that they try to come to some form of amicable solution in resolving that problem, not try to make things difficult, make things difficult for the other. So this is show concerning that of those things that the Sharia have taken to place. So also I mentioned if there's like branches by way of a tree or things that may be of haraj, of some form of harm to one of the neighbors, then that neighbor that is now harming him or harming the neighbor on his property, then he can take certain steps and measures. So either they try to come to some form of amicable solution, or the person can take the necessary steps to remove that harm that is being caused by trees that are falling onto his property, that is causing either harm to his property or to his land. So those things the Sharia have taken into consideration. Aywa.
The same ruling on a branch applies to the case when a wooden column extends and reaches the land or house of one's neighbor. It is impermissible to have in one's property that which may cause harm to one's neighbors, such as having a bathroom, a kitchen, a bakery, or a cafe, whose harms may extend to reach one's neighbors, or having a factory whose noise and working of machinery could disturb one's neighbors.
Hey, so even the society shows regarding that, even the extent regarding of the Sharia, regarding concerning things that are in place, that consider type of, as being in that neighborhood, the type of business that are or dwellings that are suitable. So dwellings and also factories being too close to each other, those things to be considered regarding concern the type of haraj, the type of harm or inconvenience it might cause to their neighbors. So these are things the Sharia also have taken into consideration. Aywa.
Even having a window overlooking the house of one's neighbors may cause harm to him. Moreover, if there is a joint wall between two persons, it is prohibited to open a window through it without the neighbor's permission. Furthermore, it is impermissible to put or fix wooden pegs in the joint wall or in that of the neighbor, except when necessary, and when the wall could bear those wooden pegs and the roof cannot stand without them. This is according to the Ma'ruf, traceable hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, in which the Prophet ﷺ says, "No one should prevent his neighbor from fixing a wooden peg in his wall." Abu Hurairah then said to his companions, "Why do I find you averse to it? By Allah, I certainly will narrate it to you." Related by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. This hadith proves that it is impermissible to prevent one's neighbor from fixing wooden pegs into one's wall. If one refuses, those in authority are to force him to accept, since it is a permanent right of one's neighbor.
And those are the rules that he mentioned regarding of those hukuk, regarding neighborly rights, that regarding concerning if there's a need regarding placing something on the wall, then this is allowed. And if the other neighbor object to this, then a person get the authorities involved to look at the matter. So it shows, and so again concerning these things, that I'll find that in many societies that these things are in place in many societies regarding that building of buildings, regarding the height of the building to compare to the neighbors, the building, the surrounding buildings. Those things are considered regarding blocking the person, like primary light. Those things are considered regarding the walls and the boundaries. So all those things that to say that Islam already over 1400 years somewhat have considered and put in place a system. But we'll find that so it shows regarding Islam, regarding the Sharia, that it does take into consideration all these matters, especially regarding rights between neighbors. Aywa.
When this is mentioned above are some of the rulings on neighbourhood. As for the rulings with respect to roadways, they are as follows. It is impermissible to annoy people on the roadways. One should rather clear a passage for people and remove harmful things from the road, since these deeds are part of faith, as the Prophet ﷺ stated in his hadiths.
So the author, after discussing briefly regarding concerning matter that relates to jiwar, regarding concerning neighborly rights and some of his ahkam in brief, then now he discusses the second matter to be covered is regarding of those rights and those things to be taken into consideration regarding turaqat, regarding pathways and road. So those things that is based upon al-maslaha. So it's based upon al-maslaha regarding that in today's time that making of roads in mainly go back to the state, that they are the ones somewhat would decide concerning roads being built, and also as a form of the maslaha of the people regarding the use of the roads. Regarding concern, you have like stoplights and signs that the general thing the person should try to be obedient to those things for the general maslaha for the road users in general. So regarding concern those things that one should try to be obedient as best as possible regarding the road code and signs. Aywa, they mention regarding concern that of those things that it's making the road concerned that suitable for people to use, and also to remove anything that is harmful regarding the use of the road. And this is a part of Iman, as in the hadith, where the Prophet mentioned, Al-Iman bid wa sab'una shu'ba, or bid wa sittun, that Iman is either 70 odd or 60 odd number in branch. And I mentioned adnaha, of those things, that the least number of it adna, imatat al-adha and tariq, is removing something, imatat al-adha and tariq, moving something harmful from the pathway. So it's a part of Iman. Aywa.
It is impermissible as well for a person to build in his land what may cause trouble to the passage of vehicles, people or animals, such as building a roof to be shaded by in the road, which prevents the passage of people, riding vehicles or animals, or what they carry. It is impermissible also to specify a parking place on the road or the street for one's riding animal or one's vehicle, as long as this may make the road narrow or result in accidents.
Yes, so those are things that is being mentioned regarding of those things that one after regarding the use of the road, regarding the public walkway, that these things the person tried to not be a hazard to others, not be a hazard to others regarding the road and also public pathways. Aywa.
Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said, "It is impermissible to have anything protruding from one's building into the road. It is even forbidden to plaster one's wall that is next to the street or the road, except when leaving a space equal to the thickness of plastering to the inside of one's house and plastering the wall as wide as one has left of space." It's a bit wordy.
Aye.
Next one. One is also prohibited to do certain things on the road or on the street, such as planting, building, digging, putting firewood, slaughtering, throwing garbage or ashes or the like, which may cause harm to the passers-by. Municipality officials are to prevent such actions and inflict a deterrent punishment upon whoever acts contrarily. For many people do not take this matter seriously. Some of them occupy the roads to serve their own interests. They use the road for parking their vehicles, putting their construction materials such as bricks, iron or cement, digging the roads and doing many other violating actions. Others throw harmful things such as food waste, rubbish, impure objects in the marketplace without any concern for harming other Muslims. All of these actions are prohibited by Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah exalted be He says, "And those who harm believing men and believing women for something other than what they have earned, i.e. deserve, have certainly borne upon themselves a slander and manifest sin." Surah Ahzab, ayat 58.
Yes, the Sheikh is discussing regarding of those things, regarding implementing these things, he goes back one to the Muslim to understand regarding that these are the things that he should try to uphold, regarding not arming or doing things which is harmful to others, regarding the use of the pathways and the roads. And second also, that also for the state also to be the one kind of somewhat to oversee that certain things are done. So regarding concerning cars or vehicles are left in the parked, or things are left that would block the road, is for the state to ensure that these things are removed. For the state to ensure that these things are removed. So these things, that some of those things go to the Muslim as the individual, regarding knowing what are the things that are not to be done, and also for the state to ensure that these things are in place and that they are carried out based upon the bylaws of that city. Aywa.
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said, "A Muslim is he from whose hand and tongue Muslims are safe."
So I mentioned regarding concerning hands and tongue, regarding his hands, regarding concerning anything which is harmful by way of doing things, putting things in a pathway, or building things in a pathway, or leaving things in a pathway that is harmful, then this is by the person by way of his hand. And concerning his actions, by way of his hand, meaning the person's actions. Aywa.
Moreover, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Faith has over 60 branches, the most excellent of which is declaring that there is no deity but Allah, and the lowest of which is removing harmful things from the way, and modesty is a branch of faith." There are numerous.
Yes, the hadith is somewhat this hadith of Abu Hurairah anhu that's he mentioned here. That this particular hadith is somewhat clear regarding mention that adnaha, that of the least of iman, or of those things the least of iman, imatatul adha and tariq, is removing something harmful from a pathway. So this would mean that, as I said, mafhum al-mukhalafa, that the opposite understanding, that if removing something, it is of iman to remove something harmful, then placing something harmful is not to be done in the first place. So that shows that the Muslims are not to be of those who place things that are harmful in the pathway or in the ways of others. And also other things that are not to be done regarding turuqat, regarding concerning matters that relates to the person not defecating, urinating in places that people may use as a common pathway or resting place.
Do we apply that same principle for the first hadith?
For the first hadith?
But like the Muslims say from the Muslim, so do we apply the opposite? The Muslim not safe from the non-Muslim.
From a non-Muslim?
Yeah.
This hadith
So they're saying that the Muslim is safe from the Muslim.
Aywa.
Do we mafhum al-mukhalafa of that? Is that okay? The Muslim safe with the Muslim, and it's the opposite. Do
no. نمثل الحديث here concerns المسلم that regarding المفهوم المخالفة is applied accordingly. نعم. So regarding concerning المسلم من سلم المسلمون من لسان ويدي, this hadith can somewhat to emphasize regarding the Muslim that he tries to be an outstanding person regarding the way that he speaks, deal with others by way of his speech and also by way of his action. That he's not a person who that everything being put up, not unjustly treat others and wrong others by way of his speech or by way of his action. Nam? But said and this hadith concerning that first amongst the Muslims regarding the hukuk of the between themselves. As for the kuffar, then you have different hukuk that applies to them. So you have different rights that applies to them regarding non-Muslim. So each have rules that apply. So generally Muslim regarding harmful anyone unjustly, and that is not correct. That's outside that is not something which is Islam that condones. But this hadith is more emphasized regarding of the hukuk, the rights between the Muslims, between themselves, are some of these things are mentioned. Some of those things would overlap with non-Muslim, but this hadith is more discussing regarding between the Muslim first and foremost. Aywa.
There are numerous hadiths in which the Prophet ﷺ urges Muslims to respect each other's rights and to keep away from causing harm to one another. In fact, one of the things that harm Muslims most is causing them troubles on their way and putting obstacles therein.
So, so that's concerning of those hukuk regarding that relates to al-jiwar, regarding concerning neighbors, and also turakat regarding how one should behave in public or how one should treat the public ways, pathways, and the likes. So these are mentioned regarding, and if you have conflict, then it goes back to as-sulh. So he mentioned regarding concerning that this extent from way of sulh, by way of mediation. If there's any dispute between neighbors, then they and cannot be resolved, then they find a way to and they can that they either find a way to resolve them in the best way possible. So that inshallah ta'ala that the author Hafidullah have ended this particular discussion regarding matters relating to, as he mentioned, fi bab fi ahkam jiwar wa turaqat. So inshallah ta'ala we move to the next chapter. You can see few pages. And we'll try to finish this bab and go to the next kitab sharakat. We're going to discuss concerning different matters. So inshallah ta'ala we'll try to complete this next chapter. So and bear in mind that it's from what the author mentioned here regarding this particular chapter that jiwar, that he was mainly discussing concerning, like seem as if a Muslim society. Like the discussion seemed to be more regarding a Muslim society, that's concerned, but also with today's situation within the Muslim, some of the Muslim, that we do live in a non-Muslim society. But I think that the focus or the main focus of this discussion regarding between Muslim, but also by way of extension, some of these rights apply also to non-Muslim. So these rights also apply to non-Muslim. So same thing applies to that. So these things also extend to non-Muslim regarding as being a neighbor.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question.
Aye.
Obviously, the hadith is emphasizing that a Muslim is safe from the Muslim from his tongue and his hand, whereas us living in a non-Muslim land, a lot of
the same
people
violate
have the, people have the
understanding.
As you know, we could be out on a trip somewhere in a non-Muslim land, and then people start to verbal abuse, all of these kind of things. Meaning that, like, them being non-Muslim, but is it that the Muslims not safe from their tongue and their hand because you're in their land?
Okay.
That's the question.
Some said that as from concerns that the hadith regarding concerning how the Muslim should conduct and behave himself, the hadith that is mentioned regarding concerning that mentioned and Muslim, that the Muslim man salima, the one who's protect or the Muslims are protected from his hands and his tongue. Regarding concern said that regarding how the Muslim should behave and conduct himself more so towards a Muslim. But also by extension we have rights that the non-Muslim have over us. So for example, if you have a neighbor, maybe a non-Muslim, so he still have right as a neighbor, right? as what is expected from you towards them. But you might find a case where, as instead of case regarding as to how them may treat us, then that's a different situation. You understand how we respond to how their treatment towards us. If they treat us good, alhamdulillah, then we should reciprocate this with good treatment. But if they're going to be one who, that you said that you mentioned that if you're out in public, right, whether it's a group or individual, and a person decide from a non-Muslim to verbally abuse you, or even attack you, then you have a right to defend yourself according to the situation and circumstance. So you have a right to defend yourself according to the situation and circumstance, just as any attacker, whether verbal or physical. You have a right to defend yourself as you seem, as you take to be, or you seem that as you see to be fitted based upon a situation and circumstance. So at times you might just walk away because the person may be a drunk. Understand? And just I don't see the situation as being one that may require you to take further action. And it may be a case where the person may be sober or drunk, but it may require that you have to be prepared to take further action.
Yeah.
You understand? So each situation, as for how they may deal with us, them said is depending on the situation and circumstance. So you have said that you have work colleagues, people in the street, neighbors, who are non-Muslim, and they treat you good. They say good morning, good afternoon. You understand? So you do the same. But it said if you're in a situation that was opposite, where the person is a neighbor or unknown and a stranger, and the situation requires that that they're being a threat, then you have to deal with the situation according to what you deem to be appropriate.
What if someone's being like abused by a neighbour? Not like abused like that, but like they're doing things like making their dog poo on your doorstep. Not like just doing petty things because of whatever reason.
Hey, sometimes if those things that maybe try to speak to them, and to the neighbour, but if something that it becomes, it's a continuous thing where they're not trying to take steps to discontinue those things, to stop those things, then it might mean that you have to raise the matter to, you understand, either to the authorities to intervene. So I said, no, so each situation, they try to take the best,
Least harmful approach.
the least harmful, the best, what is available. First, what is available according to the system that we're living in. Then if those, so you try those system. So you try to use a system, the best that you are able to get back your rights in some way or another. Aywa. So that inshallah ta'ala. So we said that now the seem as if the discussion is regarding concerning more, as I mentioned, that that as neighbors, either you find a situation that the neighbor that you have may be a Muslim, or the neighbor may be a non-Muslim, right? So as a neighbor who's a non-Muslim, he has a right as a neighbor, then and the neighbor who's a Muslim also, then he has a right as being a Muslim and a neighbor, right? So those things, it varies, but they, as a neighbor, they share certain rights. They have certain rights upon us. Those things now would exceed based upon other factors. With that, inshallah.
And I saw a recent case with Muslims in terms of like being a neighbor, and they built like done an extension, and it was just like maybe like an inch or like an inch, like nothing major. Like an inch, something small, and their neighbor took them to court, and they had to pay like £100,000.
They said depending on neighbor. You said that. So said that the fact that the Muslim, that neighbor with them, said the person of somewhat past their boundary. You understand? Then you understand. So it could go both ways. You understand? The person does have a right that he can. You understand? In trying to resolve the matter, it may go to court.
And both Muslim as well.
No, the other person was non-Muslim.
But in that case, the Muslim have violated that person if he did. You understand? Cross his boundaries.
Yeah, crossed it.
You understand? If he did, so he have crossed his boundaries. Yes, we have cases like those. So it may be a fine, and now may have they have to remove that wall.
That's evil, man. I just
Yeah. So those things occur.
I just would have gave it to them. I've got another question for you, Omar. To imagine I want a pair of trainers, yeah, for myself, but I didn't want them. So I advertised them for sale, but I said I just want retail.
Okay.
So then someone said, "Oh, what's the retail?" But I got the retail wrong. So for instance, they were $250, but I told the person $220.
So you said
Yeah.
less than what it's
Less than what it's
values.
So I dropped the trainers off. The brother sent me the money, and it's only when I went back on the app
You
I saw it
notice.
was 250.
Uh,
So I messaged him and said, look, I don't know Islamically what my stance is on this, or if I have a right, but please have mercy on me because I just want to retell you I want my money back. But alhamdulillah, the brother agreed to give my money back.
If the agreement says that if a truce is made between both parties, then that's,
Yeah.
you understand?
But if he had turned around and said,
If he had turned around and said no, then he had that right because,
Yeah,
you understand,
yeah.
that was the price that you initially put out
Yeah.
incorrectly,
Yeah.
you understand, and he bought it with that price as the sale price. So he said no, it's for him, said that goes back to both parties to come to a decision.
Mashallah.
But yes, all right, if he said no, he could have said no because that was the sale price.
Yeah.
You understand? But alhamdulillah, it was rectified. Aywa, so let's go to the next chapter. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Qala ma'alif hafidhahullah. Chapter 20, page 117. Preemption. Preemption is authentically stated in the Sunnah, and Allah exalted be He has ordained it for blocking evil means related to partnership. The great Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah have mercy on him, said, preemption is one of the merits of Sharia which proves its justice and ability to fulfill people's interests and needs. The wisdom behind legislating preemption is the necessity to prevent any harm caused to people as far as possible. Since partnership in most cases results in harm, such harm can be removed either by dividing the property or by preemption. When a partner wishes to sell his share, taking recompense its due price, the other co-owner is legally more entitled to buy it than any other strange party. Therefore, the buyer prevents the harm caused to him from partnership, and the seller is paid his due right of the price, and hence he is not harmed. Preemption also protects the buyer against the harm caused by sharing the property with a strange party. Thus, preemption is characterized with great justice and is one of the best rulings which are in conformity with sound minds, natural dispositions, and interests of people. Thus, it becomes clear that trying by fraudulent means is to invalidate the right to preempt contradicts the purpose for which preemption has been legislated. At the pre-Islamic period of ignorance and jahiliyyah, the right of preemption has been common. So if one wanted to sell one's house or garden, the neighbor or the co-owner would demand the right of preemption to buy the sold share, for such people are more entitled to buy. According to the Faqirs, preemption means that the partner is more entitled to take his counterpart's share sold to another person, a third party, for recompense, which is the same price agreed upon the third party and the other partner.
So I'm talking about what the word they use, shufha. What's the word? Recompense?
Recompense, yeah.
Preemption.
Oh.
Preemption is regarding concern that two persons, this is zawj, this is the shafa, regarding concern two together, and one wants to sell that thing. So the person you give the first option would be the person who's already your partner. So you have a business going as a partner, but you want to kind of somewhat sell your share. Now, so the person that will give more of a priority will be the person who already is involved with that partnership with you, or the person who's closest to you. So in that sense.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thus, the buyer has to sell the share he bought to the preemptor against the price upon which both the buyer and the seller agreed. This is according to what Imam Ahmad and al-Bukhari related on the authority of Jabir radiallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam decided the validity of preemption in every joint undivided property. But if the boundaries are well marked and the ways and streets are fixed, then there is no preemption. This above mentioned hadith proves that the co-owner has the right to preempt, and that preemption is only applicable and valid in land and real estates, immovable properties, but not in movable possessions, furniture, animals, and the like. The Prophet ﷺ also said, "It is not lawful for him, the partner, to sell that until the other partner gives his consent." This hadith proves that it is impermissible for the partner to sell his share to a person other than his counterpart unless he informs his counterpart about the sale. In this regard, Ibn al-Qayyim said, "It is impermissible for the partner to sell his share without informing the other partner. If he does, the other partner is more entitled to buy that share. If the partner has asked the permission of the other partner before selling a co-owned property and the latter expresses no intention to buy it, then he does not have the right to preempt it after the sale. This is conclusive ruling with which the Sharia has stated, and there are no other contradictory views in this regard." Ibn al-Qayyim maintains that the partner has no right to preempt a sold property as long as he has been asked permission before the sale and showed no intention for buying it. In fact, this view is only one of the two views of scholars on preemption. However, the majority of scholars are of the view that the partner still has the right to preempt, and his being asked permission does not nullify his right to preempt. Allah, exalted be He, knows best. Preemption is a legal right that must be observed, and it is impermissible to try deceitfully to make the other partner lose it, for preemption has been ordained to save the partner from any harm. Thus, if someone uses deceitful ways and plays tricks to deprive his partner from this right, he will harm such a partner and violate his legal right. Imam Ahmed, may Allah have mercy on him, in this concern says, "It is impermissible to use deceitful ways in order to nullify the right of preemption or any other right due to a Muslim. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said, 'Do not commit what the Jews had committed in order to make lawful what Allah has prohibited through the lowest tricks.'"
This the hadith is isnaduhu Hasan. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentioned that hadith Hasan. So the general idea regarding concerning that this discussion regarding, just like an extension from what we discussed concerning al-jiwar regarding of those who already are involved in a business or as partners. So if the person wants to sell out his share, then of those person that he should give the first opportunity to consider buying his share is the person that serves as your partner with, that is your partner, and not to do somewhat, and also to at least let him aware that you wish to maybe sell your share of what is owned. So if he wishes, he can consider buying it, or if not, then you can bring someone in, but not per se to do it where he's unaware what's taking place. Then that's going to something that ought to be a form of deception by way of that partner. Aywa.
One of the tricks that the partner may do to nullify the right of preemption is to pretend to have given his share to a third party as a gift, while he has sold it for a price. Also, the partner may ask for a high price from the other partner to make him unable to pay and thus prevent him from preempting. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn al-Taymiyyah said, "Deceitful actions and tricks played by the partner to deny the preemptor his right to preempt invalidate the contract of sale with the buyer. Besides, whatever words are written do not change the fact of the contracts." Preemption, in fact, is valid in joint land if undivided, and whatever trees and buildings are part of the land, and whatever buildings are there are part of the land. Moreover, if the land has been divided and there are still some joint utilities, such as joint walkway or a joint source of water or the like, the preemptor still has the right to preempt according to the soundest view of scholars in this regard. It is also according to the general meaning of the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, "If the boundaries are well marked and the ways and streets are fixed, then there is no preemption." This hadith signifies that preemption is valid and applicable in that indivisible things whose boundaries are established and whose roles have been designated. In this concern, Ibn al-Qayyim says, this is the soundest view as far as the preemption of neighbourhood is concerned. It is also the view maintained by the people of Basra and Shaykh al-Islam Ibn al-Taymiyyah, and is one of the two views reported about the school of Imam Ahmed. Therefore, Sheikh Taqiyuddin said, preemption of
من
neighborhood.
تقي الدين وإذا شيخ تقي الدين من هو Ibn Taymiyyah. So Ibn Taymiyyah. So in this particular discussion, that most of the aqwal that are being mentioned is that of Ibn Qayyim and Ibn Taymiyyah. So you have mentioned that. So they have and of their views. So within the Hanabila, at times you might find in this matter some khilaf, but is more inclined, meaning the author more inclined to the position taken by Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim regarding their position in some of these matters that are being discussed. Aywa.
Preemption of neighborhood is valid in case of sharing one of the rights of ownership, such as sharing in a utility of a real estate, a joint waterway or walkway or the like. This is the view maintained by Imam Ahmed. The same view is also maintained by Ibn al-Aqil, Abu Muhammad and others. In addition, Al-Harifi said, preemption of neighborhood is valid when bringing about a benefit and preventing a harm, and there are numerous hadith supporting this view. This is because neighborhood does not necessitate preemption except when neighbors share the walkway or the like. Besides, preemption has been ordained for preventing harm, which occurs in most cases of co-ownership or sharing the same utility such as walkway, a waterway or the like. Preemption is valid when someone claims it immediately after having been informed that his partner or his neighbor has sold his share of a real estate to another party. If the other partner, preemptor, does not demand the right of preemption, he will then lose it. However, if the preemptor does not know about the sale, he still has the right to preempt, even if he remains uninformed about it for years. In this concern, Ibn Hubayra says, Muslim scholars uniformly agree that when the preemptor is absent and thus uninformed about the sale, he is still entitled to demand his right of preemption to buy the sold share as soon as he returns. If there are several partners, then they are entitled to preempt according to the shares each possesses of the whole property, since they enjoy their right of preemption by virtue of their ownership. If a partner gives up his right to preempt, the other partner is entitled to buy the rest of the property or relinquish it all, since taking only part of the property will harm the buyer, and harm is not to be removed by causing harm.
It says concerning that this particular discussion that he ends with with an extension regarding concerning al-jiwar, regarding that those who are partners in business, that to consider certain things, that if one wants to discontinue from with that partnership, how to go about doing so, which is inform the other party and give them the opportunity for them to either to buy you out or to buy the person out. So it's concerning of this matter. And also from this matter, of the hikmah behind this matter, is to remove any form of adawa, any ill feeling between people who are partners. So someone said, make things as upfront, as transparent as possible, and not to do things underhanded towards your partner that may create ill feeling and also malice, and break that type of bond between both. So with that, inshallah ta'ala, that these two bab that are covered regarding the type of relationship that one should be mindful of with others, regarding others. So the type of relationship that one, even business transaction, that one should be mindful of when doing things with others or other people serving of your neighbors. What are those boundaries that Islam have put in place? So that would be the end of what is mentioned regarding this this segment of the book. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll be going regarding what you mentioned, sharikat, regarding the next discussion. So discuss concerning those other type of business matters relating to what is stated here in the book. So that inshallah today will end. Wabillahi ta'ala tawfiq. Aywa.
This basically applies to Muslim or non-Muslim.
It could be non-Muslim also.
My partner's a non-Muslim. I'm Muslim, he's non-Muslim.
It still applies.
It still applies.
It applies, yeah. It applies to both. Come said that, as I mentioned before, that so your partner in business, in that the necessary condition, he has to be Muslim. So if he's a non-Muslim, so because of being your partner, then he has that right. He has that right regarding those things. that if you want to,
even if the person that's going to be the third party is a Muslim. So say for example, I've got a
yeah,
Muslim
even
partner
so,
and the third party is Muslim.
yeah, regardless.
I'm going to have sort of favoritism for the Muslim because I want the Muslim to have that share that I am for. No, I don't inform him. I just give it to my Muslim brother because that's my brother. You know how.
Yes, I'm saying that.
That's my guy, so I'm giving it to him.
Hey, something that those things that sometimes these matters are based upon, etc., is trying to be as transparent and as upfront with others, and also not to, not to be unjust in how we deal with others, with a Muslim or non-Muslim. You understand? So that's the thing. So, and happiness, and not also sometimes to have favoritism towards unnecessary favoritism towards others. So certain things are set in a particular way as to be as a transparent and as fair in the people that you are dealing with directly. So that means your business partner.
The reason why I'm asking because practically, obviously, the book tells us the theoretical side of it, but it doesn't think about, why the Prophet like what happened in the time of the Prophet, why these things were taught to the Sahaba or things like that. So, is there anything that you know directly why this specific topic was something that was
included?
Yeah.
These things that have been said there is their theoretical concept because these things that they do occur. So find that in terms of Sahaba anhum, that you have those who are involved in business transactions, and at times some of those business partners would be non-Muslim or even Muslim. So Islam regarding certain matters, it have one set rule in place that applies to all, whether the person is Muslim or non-Muslim. So the person who's involved in business transactions or business to understand what are the rules that are in place, right? So the person is clear regarding how he should go about conducting himself and go about and what is allowed to do and not allowed to be done, right? So that's the thing. So business transaction, just like salat, the person knowing the rule of salat so he can perform salat correctly. Also, if a person that has to, a person who's involved in business transaction, also they need to know what are those rules, because you understand he will face different things that he has to know what is the boundary of the Sharia on those things.
So would I be blameworthy if I'm a tajir? I say I'm a tajir. I'm a merchant, but I don't know this stuff.
Then the person is more prone to fall into errors. He's more prone to fall into errors because he's not knowing the guidelines that are in place Islamically. So if a person, unless the person knows about the Islamic rule, then he's more prone to fall into error.
But is he sinful or does he fall under?
And the ulama mentioned that if the person want to build,
like you mentioned about salah, it's wajib for the Muslim to know about these things.
The person said, so regarding concerning these matters, the person, a businessman, then becomes wajib upon him to know the rules of business. Because now become fardul ayn upon him, because now he's actually now involved in that field. Now I'm saying he has to know. So he has said, so as to do things in a way which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So knowing about riba, knowing about what is halal and haram regarding business transaction, he needs to know something. Because now that knowledge become fardul ayn upon him, because now they said mubashir, he's a part of that thing now. A part of that thing, so he needs to know the rules. لا بأس قدر الله ما شاء.
Question I want to ask let's touch on like percentages, for example. So when you come together as a business and you want to split, does it talk about how to resolve the issue of percentages?
No, so as for this issue, it didn't go into that thing. As for this discussion today, it went into concerning the percentage split. Some of those things concerns percentage split. It all depends on what was the agreement between both from the start. You understand? Concerning percentage split goes back to when they started the business, or when what was the agreement that they made between themselves regarding what share or percentage each receive according to their level of involvement or investment. طيب بالله التوفيق. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.